Hello, and thank you for joining us today in our study of the book of Psalms. Today we're in Psalm 126, and we continue the section dealing with the Song of Ascents. And so, as we come into Psalm 126, you have a subject matter that is actually somewhat different from many of the others in this particular section, in that it's going to deal with a period of captivity. Now, it's not very long, as with most in this section. It's only 6 verses in length. And yet, you're going to have two distinct parts in this particular psalm. Let's look and see what the psalmist says. In Psalm 126, beginning in verse 1, we read, "When the Lord brought back the captivity of Zion, we were like those who dream. Then our mouth was filled with laughter, and our tongue with singing. Then they said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us, and we are glad. Bring back our captivity, O Lord, as the streams in the south. Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. He who continually goes forth weeping, bearing seed for sowing, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him." As you look at Psalm 126, the message here is about being brought back from captivity. Now, the way that it's worded is a little bit odd and can sometimes leave us with the wrong impression, which is why the very first thing I want us to talk about in this psalm is this idea of what he means in verse 1 and in verse 4 of bringing back or having brought back the captivity of Zion. We're not talking about God bringing back the principle of captivity, but rather the idea of God bringing back the people of Israel from captivity. That He has returned them home, that He has brought them back from that place where they have been. We do not know what the timeline is for the writing of Psalm 126. However, it does seem to fall into a time period where at least some of the children of Israel are dealing with a time of captivity, or a time where another nation has taken control of at least a piece of Israel at that particular juncture. And so you have this principle that God has brought them back in the past, that these things have happened before, and God has always brought them back. And when He does, it was like a dream. It was the greatest thing that they had ever seen. They were filled with laughter. Their tongues were singing. It was absolutely joyful. The nations around recognized and said, "The Lord has done great things for them." And He had. And so you have this message of rejoicing in the past when God has brought them back from captivity. Now they need Him to do it again. And that's the message of verses 4 through 6. Because in verse 4 he says, "Bring back our captivity, O Lord, as the streams in the south." They're not saying put us back into captivity, but rather bring us back again from these difficult circumstances and from the problem of captivity in which we find ourselves. And then in verses 5 and 6, you're going to have these contrasts, or these uh, other side of the coin messages that are going to be given, dealing with the idea of the joy that will be brought. He says in verse 5, "Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. And he who continually goes forth weeping, bearing seed for sowing, shall doubtless come in again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him." In other words, we entered into this captivity in tears. We entered into this turmoil with great sorrow, bearing seed for sowing, with nothing but work ahead of us, as it were. But we come back with joy. And we come back with this mentality of rejoicing, but also bringing the sheaves, the bounty of our work, with us. The psalmist has the perspective of recognizing that while things are bad now, or while things are bad in the present moment, when the Lord helps, and when things are allowed to return to the way that they should be, there will be great rejoicing, and it will be a time of joy. And that those things will happen because the Lord has done great things for Israel. So as you look at Psalm 126, you're looking at a psalm that is going to give us the perspective of an Israelite of what it's like when you're truly putting your trust in God, that He will do what He promised to do in taking care of you. And that brings about joy. And that is going to bring about the great things that God does for Israel. Now, it's not all going to happen in the immediate sense. There's going to be tears, and there's going to be sorrow and weeping and turmoil. But in the end, it will be joy and righteousness. These are the things that I see in Psalm 126. Thank you so much for watching the video today, and I hope that these things have helped you to understand what's being discussed here. Next time, we'll come back and we'll look at Psalm 127 as we continue our study through the Psalms. I hope you'll join us then. But until next time, have a great day.